Thank you so much. It's really an honor when I read the biographies of the people here. It's truly an honor to get to meet such worldwide Jewish leaders, and particularly I've been a fan of Mr. Waters for many, many years, so it's a personal honor. 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago to the date, I received a letter in the mail from a leader of a Jewish community leader in North Carolina, telling me, someone I had never met, telling me that I would burn in hell for the memory of the victims of the Holocaust. And as I stared at that letter, I wondered what I had done in my lifetime that had merited such hatred from a Jewish community leader. And certainly thinking about my background, nothing in my background or my upbringing would suggest that I would be the target of true hatred from a Jewish community leader. In fact, unbeknownst to the writer of the letter, much of my family, including two grandparents, several aunts and uncles, many cousins, some who had been born and some who never would be born, were in fact victims of that Holocaust, for whom the writer thought I should then burn in eternal damnation in their memory. You see, my father had been a Holocaust survivor. He spent the war in the woods in Poland. He left his town in Poland to join the resistance. He was gone about 10 days. They said he had too many gold teeth. It didn't look like he'd ever survive as a pass for a non-Jew. Went back to his town of Białorowska, and the Jewish section of the town was gone. In the 10 days he was gone, the Jewish section had been gone. Spent the war in the woods, never getting caught, with a group of 6 people, 3 of whom died. And after being liberated by the Russians, spent several years in Warsaw and Berlin looking for survivors, looking for employment, and had found neither survivors or employment. But he couldn't get out of Poland. Poland had quotas. So he got a false passport from Danzig and came in as an illegal immigrant. And through that process, Gutman Mogilnitsky of Białorowska, Poland, became Moshe Gutman, first of Danzig, and then Max Gutman of the Bronx, New York. And he landed in the Lower East Side in the Garment District of New York. Working 6 days a week in the Garment Center, he learned some broken English. He consistently went bankrupt competing against cheaper Asian goods, and finally died when I was 16 years of age. I had attended public schools in Queens, New York, and then in the Bronx for high school. And when he died, I went to work first as a dishwasher after school and then cleaning tables, until I worked my way as a waiter through Columbia University, finished at the top of my class, Harvard Law School, finished at the top of my class, clerked on our federal courts first and then for our United States Supreme Court, an honor that goes to 40 law students a year. I had spent 2 years as a special assistant to the director of our FBI and 27 years as a lawyer and a partner in perhaps the leading litigation firm in our country, and as an advisor to many Democrat candidates and officials. At the time I got that letter, I was on the board of the Washington Hebrew Home. I'd been a member of 2 shuls, a Reform shul and an Orthodox shul. And so I stared at that letter and wondered, how could someone say that I should burn in hell for the memory of the victims of the Holocaust? And then the next line told the answer. It gave my transgression. It had been written to me. It had been written to several prominent supporters of Barack Obama. And our transgression was supporting Barack Obama amidst the presidential campaign. And indeed, although none were as extreme as that letter, many American, European, and Israeli Jews were concerned about the Obama candidacy. I heard those concerns daily during the campaign. I worked during the campaign hard to address every one of those current concerns among the Jewish community. In the case of that letter, many people urged that I ignore it. Penny, our head of finance, had gotten one as well and begged me to ignore it, but I couldn't, so I reached out and called the author, and I spent hours on the phone first and then through emails educating the author about Barack Obama and about myself. And because I believe then and now that the more understanding that exists about the man and about his beliefs, the more we can get on with the business of making progress and making the world more prosperous and more secure for everyone. In that case, my pursuit paid off. My attacker ended up wishing me a happy Pesach, corresponding throughout the campaign and calling me a mensch. And at the end, I never asked her who she voted for, because the increased dialogue and understanding were the reward in themselves. But truth be told, in some sectors of the Jewish community, among a large majority in Israel, to some colonists at some Seder tables, and indeed, I suspect, among many at the World Jewish Congress, that concern still exists. There is, of course, much admiration, much support and delight for the progress being made in the United States for many causes, but concern still exists. So the questions continue to be raised, and the questions continue to deserve to be addressed. Who is Barack Obama? How should Jewish communities, indeed, how should Arab communities or any communities, understand his action? Did Israel have a stronger supporter or a better friend in the 8 years before Barack Obama and the Bush administration? Has Israel lost a best friend? And then why doesn't he just say what many in Israel or Jewish supporters would like to hear? There are questions about the president, in whom I believe to my core, questions being raised about a country I have long loved, being raised here in a country I'm growing to love. They're raised with me as I walk through the Grand Place, and they're certainly raised with me in the Diamond District of Antwerp. But they're questions earnestly in search of answers, and they're questions that will continue. Now, I understand that the answers will largely come from each of you, that you will each have your thoughts, and that's the best way. But I have some ideas and thoughts about ways to approach your own thinking. First and foremost, Barack Obama is someone who tries to address difficult issues without pandering. It's often easier for politicians or leaders to say what audiences want to hear. That takes little courage. But saying the same truth to everyone is far more difficult. Try addressing different issues with more than platitudes designed to appease one audience without angering another. Try telling particular groups not what they want to hear, but what they should hear. It's often not easy, it's never politically expedient, but it's the path to short-term incremental progress that will build over the long-term resolution. And most importantly, it's the right thing to do. So take the example of January 20th, 2008, in the middle of a Democratic primary season, when Senator Obama chose to talk about anti-Semitism. He said boldly in a speech, "The scourge of anti-Semitism has at times revealed itself in our community." Where did he choose to make that pronouncement? In AIPAC, where I took him twice? To the B'nai B'rith? Nope. Barack Obama chose to make his pronouncement on the existence of anti-Semitism in America in an all-black church in Atlanta on Martin Luther King Day. He got no political flattery points that day, but in so doing, and in his candor, he brought two cultural groups just slightly closer together. Through his thoughts and his words, but mainly through his honesty and his courage, he brought us out of the shadow that always exists about anti-Semitism and let it be addressed. And then after becoming president, Barack Obama delivered these words to a crowd at a speech. He said, quote, "America's strong bonds with Israel are well known. This bond is unbreakable. It is based on cultural and historic ties." And in the same speech, he continued, "Palestinians must abandon violence. Resistance through violence and killing is wrong, and it does not succeed. It's a story with a simple truth, that violence is a dead end. It is a sign neither of courage nor of power to shoot rockets at sleeping children or to blow up old women on a bus. That is not how moral authority is claimed. That's how it's surrendered." Again, where did President Obama choose to deliver these words about the unbreakable bond with Israel and these harsh words about Palestinian conduct? At an AIPAC meeting? In Tel Aviv? Nope. These words were delivered in Cairo. They were delivered to a packed house with Arab leaders and students and members of a variety of Muslim communities. President Obama never once minced words. He is not one who minces words. And at the end of that speech, an American president who proclaimed the bond with Israel to be unbreakable and decried blowing up buses and sending rockets into town as an act of moral cowardice got a standing ovation. And I was standing and applauding in Washington, D.C., and I hope they were standing and applauding in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and in Rabat and Ankara, and in Brussels and in Mons and in Antwerp. For in that standing ovation that day, you can find the rest of the answers to the questions I posed a few minutes ago. In that standing ovation, you can find all you need to know to make your own judgments. And in that standing ovation was the lasting answer to my now friend in North Carolina who once wished me eternal damnation for my support of Barack Obama. As to the question of whether President Obama and the United States are pro-Israeli or pro-Palestinian, the answer is found in that standing ovation. The answer is, of course, both, for they are the same thing. For today, we well know that there can be no zero-sum games, that for those willing to choose peace to be among the brotherhood of nations, we either rise together or fall together, and particularly when you're dealing with resolving historical violent disputes between neighbors, there can never be winners and losers. You can't walk away with one winning and one losing. There can never be true peace, never true security. Both Israelis and Palestinians deserve a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace, including a settlement of their conflict that results in two states, in which both Israeli and Palestinian people can realize their dreams for their children. The answer to whether the U.S. remains as good a friend and as strong a supporter of Israel today as it had in the 8 years before Barack Obama, did they lose a best friend? Did somehow Israel get hurt by that election? That answer is found in that standing ovation. Because as the president said in Cairo, the bond between Israel and the United States has been and fully remains today unbreakable. David Axelrod used those words last week in front of the National Democratic Jewish Alliance in a well-publicized speech. That bond is unbreakable. We have been and we remain dear friends and dear allies. But when analyzing what matters, when analyzing trends, that's not the important question. The question is not whether America and Israel are dear friends and allies, for we've long been so and will remain so. The question I would hope the World Jewish Congress would be asking is, what is the value of that friendship in achieving security and peace? Having friends and allies who say things for you is nice. Having friends and allies with credibility and standing in the world, with the ability to play a meaningful role in reaching a lasting peace, with the credibility to be listened to around the world, that's the best friend you want. And on that score, there can't be any debate. For in the 57 minutes in Cairo, and in the year and 4 months of this administration, the credibility has changed markedly. They are now listening. They are listening in Cairo. They're listening in Damascus. They're listening in Brussels. When America speaks, there's credibility. Israel's best friend is now a credible friend. There could be nothing more that Barack Obama could do for Israel than increase America's credibility while remaining its best friend. That is the closest step to security and lasting peace. And that's what's so frustrating for me, whether I deal with people in North Carolina or in the Grand Place. As a litigator for 27 years, whenever I did a mediation with another side, I had a simple rule. I told the other side, you pick the mediator, whoever you like. Because I can't convince you if the mediator, he can't convince you if that's someone I picked. He's got to have the credibility with you. I can convince anybody. He's got to have the credibility with you. I don't need the mediator. It's so fundamental that the most important thing America could do is increase its standing and its credibility while remaining Israel's best friend. But it's a lesson lost on so many. And it's so important to what I do every day in Belgium and what other U.S. ambassadors do around the globe. And lots of those ambassadors have names like Kaplan and Rifkin and Sussman throughout. And what we all work on greatly is Muslim communities outreach. We have an iftar dinner marking the end of Ramadan. I've visited the Muslim centers in Molenbeek. I've gone to mosques. We work every day to increase the U.S. partnership in the Muslim communities. And in so doing, we're taking the increasingly important steps forward in our relationship with the Israeli and Jewish communities. We're building the credibility. We are working for peace and security for all. As my two bosses said earlier this year, President Obama at the trilateral meetings with Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Abbas in New York last September, and Secretary Clinton during an interview in Cairo, much has been accomplished and much remains to be done. Palestinians have indeed strengthened their efforts on security, but they need to do more to stop incitement, and they need to move forward on the negotiations. Israelis have facilitated greater movement and have discussed important steps to restrain settlement activity, but they plainly need to do more and need to translate the discussions into actions. And it remains important for Arab states to take concrete steps to continue to promote peace. As Secretary Clinton made clear in Cairo, settlements have never been a precondition by anyone, Palestinian or Arab, or the United States, to getting into negotiation, because the negotiations will resolve such issues on a long-term basis. But the issue remains an irritant, a terrible flashpoint for people in the region. Now, in recent days, the smoke signals have been trending perhaps more favorably. With a nuclear threat from Iran meriting unified attention, it's for sure indeed time. For can you imagine if we let real peace and security escape because we can't get by an irritant and a flashpoint? Can you imagine with such serious issues facing the Mideast as the looming threat from Iran or basic long-term security and prosperity if we fail to rise together? Paraphrasing Henry Kissinger, the solutions wait just ahead. All we now need is the willing participants. And as President Obama has long demonstrated to me, whether on healthcare or economic reform or every other issue he's tackled, we should never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Let's take one step at a time. Thanks so much, and I'm happy to address all questions you might have.